Alright, this is my Unorthodox Amascut video, and in its current state, this just might be the hardest combat achievement that I've ever attempted. It's so difficult in fact, that I actually died right at the end of this kill, and because of that, I kinda really don't even feel like I earned it or completed it properly. I am actively working on improving and want to have a video where I execute this achievement truly properly, linked in the description as soon as possible. But this is the kill that unlocked my gold devoured title. So I'm going to share it, and I'm going to share whatever insights that I think can be helpful to anyone pursuing this achievement in the future. I will speed through a lot of the early phases, as there's a lot of waiting in this challenge, and the significant majority comes in the final phase. I'll still talk about some of the important parts in the first few phases though. So the biggest gimmick with this challenge is that you have to leave a Amascut with 9 million HP or higher as you enter phase 7. That essentially means that you want to do very little damage during the first 6 phases of the fight. That essentially means that you want to do very little damage in the first 6 phases of the fight. And because of that, you can honestly just shield camp and use basic abilities. So phase 1 is very boring. It's kind of just staying alive, stacking some storm shards, and waiting up north as close to the north wall as possible as to avoid accidentally despawning any scarabs. That's going to be a common theme for the first 4 phases, is really hugging the north wall and proactively avoiding stepping on any scarab burrows. But otherwise, it's kind of just an AFK fest for the first phase. Phase 2 is going to be somewhat normal. Kill the gorilla and kill the chains. However, you are not allowed to kill any crocodiles. That goes for phase 2 and phase 7. So the best approach is going to be to entangle crocodiles and then go far away to the other side of the arena. That way the crocs will be stuck and out of attack range. I'm usually able to tank 3 out of the 4 crocs, and I actually enjoy doing that. It's probably the most fun part of the fight, aside from phase 7 in my opinion. If I could, I would actually tank all 4 of the crocs, but their aggression is determined by proximity, and it's not really practical to get all 4 unfortunately. Still, I do like to think that by tanking 3 of the crocs, I'm also helping out my teammates a little bit, making their lives just a little bit easier while they're running the lights on this phase. Some of the tips that I can think to share that might make croc tanking a little bit simpler are, firstly, to camp your spirit shield. The spirit shield is extremely powerful. You'll see that I often use no food at all, and even in bad kills, I won't use any more than a brew. So it's really manageable, just camping the spirit shield and entangling the crocs out of attack range. Even whenever they are in your attack range, if I didn't entangle them properly for example, it's still very manageable. And it actually kind of reminds me of triple jads, where a lot of times their attacks will be on different ticks, so prayer flicking and using resonance accordingly for a huge heal makes the crocs pretty trivial. The other gimmick with phase 2 in the unorthodox kill is that the light bearers must wait to deposit their light to their respective altar with less than 3 seconds remaining on the insta-kill timer. That can be pretty sketchy for a few reasons, but the simplest way to do that and to get that done is firstly to wait to grab the light. You don't want to instantly grab the light after killing your chains on the inside rooms, but instead, you want to wait until there's about 25 seconds left on the destruction timer. That's because the light would otherwise despawn about 30 seconds after you grab it. So instead, you'll wait for 25 seconds on the clock, grab the light, and then run as normal. When it comes to depositing the light, it actually takes 4 ticks after clicking the altar for it to register as a successful deposit. So you'll need to be careful and click the statue no earlier than 4.8 seconds on the clock, and absolutely no later than 3 seconds on the clock. Anywhere within that 3 to 4.8 seconds on the destruction timer is going to be the sweet spot to deposit your light. From there, there's no need to do damage to a Amascut, and we can just wait out the rest of the phase, and also wait out phase 3 in the same way we did the first phase. Shield camping, and just using basic abilities to do small damage to maintain adrenaline. At the end of phase 3, we'll want all players to be hugging the north wall, and here comes probably the second hardest part of the fight. The Scabrous would be proud achievement, where we're not allowed to ever step on any scarab burrows. The simplest way that we found to do that is by absolutely hugging the north or south wall at all times of the phase. So at the start of the phase, I'll use my bow that has a 9 tile range, and I'll use that to get the aggression of the gorilla before quickly running back towards the wall. While the gorilla is running towards me, I'll also entangle the gorilla for simplicity's sake. Now, when it comes to killing scarab, I want to be very careful, and I want to do so from an extra safe distance. Again, hugging that north wall. I'll try and grab the aggro of scarabs from the wall by again using my 9 tile range bow, just like I did with the gorilla. I don't want to use any powerful abilities that would kill the Scarabs in the middle of the arena, because it would not be worth the risk of then running into the middle myself to pick one up and accidentally step on a burrow in that process. Instead, I just use my Gricko to aggro them, and I will wait until they come close to me. Once the Scarabs are in the room and the chain killers are doing their thing, I'm going to be extremely careful to dive and surge at the exact same time to get from the north wall onto the south wall, where I'll then be ready to click on the statues. It's really important to do that surge dive in the same tick, and I realize how simple that sounds, but I still want to emphasize how important that actually is, because I have accidentally failed a kill by surging into the middle onto a burrow before diving onto the south wall. Once I'm on the south wall, I'll click statues, place prisms, and kill dogs. And we'll do the same thing as in the second phase, where the light bearers are going to wait to grab their light until 25 seconds on the clock, run, and deposit between 3 and 4.8 seconds on the clock. The light bearers are also being very attentive when they leave their portal to just hug the wall during their run, so they're not going to be running to the middle of the arena with their light. Once they exit the portal, they'll run directly south and then directly along the south wall until they get to the statue. After depositing the light, we'll all just wait on the south wall. There's no need to do damage to Amascut, and there's no need to take any unnecessary risk cutting through the middle of the arena at this time. We can just wait out the rest of this phase on the south wall. Phase 5 is going to be a very normal phase. The main team that I go with likes to do this in 2 cycles. This team today did it in 1 cycle. It doesn't really matter too much, but a good target HP at the end of Phase 5 is to leave Amascut with 9.2 million HP. Phase 6 is again going to be mostly normal, except no one is allowed to damage the big green core in the middle of the room. Not even so much as a rack. Just ignore the core altogether. Get through the climb and set up your sunshine on Amascut when appropriate. The gimmick here is that by not killing the core at all, the black shielding HP on Amascut is going to be pretty high, but it's not a big deal. We'll kill the clones and get through the black HP as normal, and from there, bring Amascut down as close to 9 million HP as you can do safely. This can also be a really good time to spam 5 Emerald Aurora auto attacks in order to get 5% damage reduction going into the next phase, as the next phase is going to be a really lengthy one. There's a good amount to cover for Phase 7, but I do want to try to be relatively brief as not to be overwhelming. First up, we're going to need to survive anywhere from 7 to 10 full cycles of statue vokes and damage cycles. So to optimize our damage on the boss, we'll alternate doing 1 cycle with melee and 1 cycle with magic. Every cycle we'll want to get a crit buff, get a few core abilities off on Amascut, and then focus on dodging floor mechanics. Not only for our own survivability, since the floor mechanics hurt a lot, but also because we're only allowed to make a certain number of mistakes before getting insta-killed. So in a melee cycle, fundamentally what I like to do is to get my Meteor and my Berserk. I'll barge and bleed assault early, more or less around the time that the statue name is being called. And if it does wind up being a Scabrous and I lose out on some of that assault damage, I'm okay with that. I really think it's not a big deal. I prefer to Berserk a little bit early like this, so that I can get my big abilities off quickly and also have my Berserk end early enough that I'm not taking increased risk or taking increased damage during Amascut's highly deadly Obliterate attacks. In any event, with my Berserk, all I really want to do is get my Roar and my Exekill, overpower, pulverize, and either a Claw or a Hurricane, depending on my adrenaline. I'll also make sure that I save my Devotion defensive exclusively for the melee cycle, so that's going to be my first defensive of choice. After getting off the core of my damage, I'm going to switch to my magic gear, and I'm just going to play safe from there on out for the rest of that cycle. I'll even camp my Spirit Shield if need be, and I'll focus on dodging. That's been one of the biggest takeaways for me with this achievement, is that it's better to just get off a few of your huge abilities and then dodge properly, rather than try and be fancy, do a world record Berserk, and end up messing up a bunch of floor mechanics. While I'm dodging, I'll of course still try and do damage, but the absolute priority needs to be dodging and surviving. If for any reason at all my bladed dive goes on cooldown, whether that's because I messed up a floor mechanic or it's because I used my dive on a shockwave pattern rather than a tile pattern, which doesn't actually reset the cooldown of your dive, my mentality from that point on needs to shift from doing damage to staying safe. The moment that I recognize my dive is no longer available to me, I'm not going to take any risk of going melee distance to Amascut, or any risk of staying still while in Narnia. My sole focus at that point needs to be going to what's often referred to as the Nakatra tile, or the magic tile, whichever one is closest to me, and I'll have a little picture up on screen of said magic tile. There's one in each of the 4 quadrants. So the reason that these magic tiles are so important is because they are by far the simplest place to dodge from. On any given floor pattern, no matter what, you can either take one step into an adjacent tile and be safe, or you can surge diagonally through and across Amascut into a safe tile. So finding and abiding by these magic tiles is the absolute foundation of this achievement. I'm definitely far from perfect, as you've seen with my footage, but I still want to emphasize these magic tiles because that's what I'm working on right now, and perfectly practicing those tiles is ultimately what's going to make you perfect at dodging. So I'm well aware I'm not there yet, but still take that advice from me. The magic tiles are the foundation of this achievement, particularly when your dive goes on cooldown for whatever reason at all. Anyway, like I was saying earlier with the melee cycles, I'll focus on getting off my core abilities, using dive to dodge, and once my core abilities are finished or my dive goes on cooldown, I'll equip my magic gear, get to a magic tile, and focus on surviving and dodging. It is so important to dodge because every single miss that you make takes away from Tumeken's HP, and if Tumeken's HP hits 0, the team just gets insta-killed. When it's time for me to start my magic DPS cycle, I'll either use Metamorphosis or a Sunshine starting on my magic tile, and I'll take the same mentality with the melee cycles where I'll just want to get off the core abilities, that being something like my Tendrils, Omnipower, Asphyxiate, Wild Magic, and Soulfire spec. Afterwards, I'll keep doing damage, but really my number one focus is just dodging and surviving, and we'll just keep alternating cycles like this. One melee cycle, one magic cycle, until we can get through all of the boss's HP. The last real big concern, and currently this is the biggest gatekeeper and biggest design flaw with this achievement, is the Krondys statue. Since one of the sub-challenges is not to kill crocodiles, if a Krondys statue is ever called, we would in theory just have to tank crocodiles for the rest of phase 7, as the crocodiles never despawn. Depending on how early you get a Krondys call, that may make this feat impossible. If you get Krondys call with 1 million HP left and all 5 players are alive, that's obviously very winnable. But if you get Krondys with 9 million HP left, it's borderline impossible, right? Especially if you get multiple Krondys statue calls. So the one alternative that you have is to incorrectly voke a different statue. So in our case, whenever Krondys would get called, we would incorrectly voke the Het quadrant. In order to do that safely, every player is going to need to use Disruption Shield to survive. This also comes at the expense of taking away 100,000 HP away from Tumeken. That drastically increases the risk of being insta-killed by the end. So you can realistically only afford 1 or maybe 2 false vokes per kill. The other thing to be aware of with a false voke is that one player is going to need to use Immortality in order to survive a bend the knee attack that comes after a false voke. So false voking is a strategy that comes with a lot of risks and really takes away from the consistency of attempts on this feat, unfortunately. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Anyway, we got 2 Krondys calls during this kill, so we did have to do false vokes twice. You will see shortly how sketchy that made the kill in the end. That said though, unfortunately with about 1.7 million HP left in the kill, my nerves were running pretty high, and I somehow played a trick on my eyes with where the safe tile was. So I don't know what I did, but I saw the safe tile as being the diagonal tile rather than the one that was closest to me, so I surged into my own death, unfortunately. That was really upsetting. I definitely let the team down there. I let myself down on that one, but up to that point, I think I was playing pretty alright. I gave myself maybe a 7 out of 10 overall performance. But anyway, I want to take a look at the POV from one of my teammates, RSSavage, whose creative links are going to be in the description as well, and watch how they clutched out the rest of this kill. Their performance in that final stretch was actually just completely masterful, and it was equally stressful as it was exciting to watch. I mean, honestly, it's majestic the way that they finished this off. It comes down to the absolute wire. You cannot finish a kill any closer than this, where literally any singular mistake would have instantly failed the kill with just hundreds of HP left to do. There was 4,000 HP left on Tumeken, and they clutch it out masterfully, which did count for the achievement for me from Death's office as well. So first of all, Massive shout out and massive thank you to those guys, RSSavage, Vex92, Chikorita, and Klausmws. It was actually the first time that I got to game with some of these guys. I was just an alternate to the team, but I was glad to be a small part of it for that night. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I am actively working on improving at this challenge specifically and trying to go for it with another team of pals. So I'm hoping to actually live for the whole time, and when I do, I'll upload that POV unlisted and link it in the description of this video. But until then, I think it would be only fair to mention some of the other gamers that I've been going for this achievement with, who've all been tremendously helpful and have all been a big part in making this video today. So big shout outs to Accident, Arc, Hotstreak, Master Tivan, Raw, Prevented, LittlePk Br, Devil Kiritio, and Sator. It definitely takes a big roster of pals like this just to practice and ultimately get stuff done like this, so much appreciated as always. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope there are some small insights here that might be useful to anyone in pursuit of Unorthodox Amascut. But that's really about it for today, so thank you again, and I will see you next time.